Soils pose limitations and offer possibilities for different types of use and management. And if people have experience of a long time on the soil where they live, they around the world they find smart ways to manage soils. Mostly there are problems when there's a change in climate or population pressure, then the more common ways of managing soils are not valid anymore. One example of how people have overcome the difficult conditions that pot soils on the heathlands uh, have managed is this soil, the Plagen soil. So here we are with a pot soil. People chose to farm pot soils because they were in the Netherlands, for instance, they were safe for floods, dangerous floods. So they were on the flanks of the ice-pushed ridges, like here the Wageningen Hill, the Wageningse Berg. But they had to do something about fertility management because these soils were intrinsically poor. So they applied an integrated farming system by herding sheep over the heathlands, and in the night kept the sheep in the stable and collecting the dung that was periodically brought onto the land with a mixture of vegetation that was cut from the heathland and then brought into the stable, and that mixture was used to enrich the very poor pot soils, and that was then able to produce a crop for the families to be fed on. Now here we see the result of centuries of farming. So this is a completely man-made topsoil that was produced, that results under the influence of this integrated farming type. So here you see this topsoil of more than half a meter, and it's not pitch black as we saw with the soil from the steppe. And how come? That has to do with these whitish spots that are actually sand grains that migrated from this cut heathland vegetation into the stable, and that came with that mixture onto the land. So we see a bit of Albic E material from the pot soil that was just introduced in the stable by bringing that vegetation in. So this is a way how people could survive under very difficult conditions. Did people prosper on these soils? No, because the landscape was ultimately nutrient poor or relatively poor, but they could survive. Was this a sustainable system? In the beginning, maybe yes, but ultimately people had to collect vegetative material to produce these dark topsoils from about 7 or 10 times the area of their farm, which meant removal of vegetation from sandy landscape, and of course the result was wind erosion. So massive wind erosion took place, covering whole villages. So ultimately the system was not sustainable, and this system was abolished by royal decree at the end of the 19th century, and also conveniently was more or less the time when mineral fertilizer was introduced in agriculture.